All right, everyone. So this is the second part of the lecture that I started for last class, and I'm just gonna expand on our current discussion by summarizing a long article which I did not assign by Rosalind Guild from 2007, Post-Feminist Media Culture, Elements of a Sensibility. She's a British cultural historian who has analyzed post-feminism in depth. And so she argues, first of all, that post-feminism is a sensibility that, the word sensibility is quite vague, but it actually presents a set of stable features that she identifies as such. Femininity becomes, under the regime of post-feminism, a bodily properties, mainly understood as a bodily property. There is an intensification of self-surveillance, monitoring, and discipline by women on their own bodies. There is a shift from woman as a sex object to a desiring sexual subject. This is in the context of a general sexualization of culture in which women, of course, play a key role. There is a focus upon individualism, choice, and empowerment, and there is also a resurgence of sexual difference. Now, the first feature, femininity as a bodily property. Guild says that the possession of a sexy body, rather than being, a mother, a good mother, or a good wife, is presented in the media as the ultimate source of women's identity and power. Celebrities' bodies, as well as ordinary women's bodies, are obsessively scrutinized and subject to judgment, both in women's magazines and TV programs. One may think, especially the reality TV genre, one may think of America's Next Top Model as just one example. There is an intensification of self-surveillance, monitoring, and discipline, as we said, which have been going on, of course, for a long time and been required to women in order to successfully perform femininity. But Gill argues that now these are intensifying through the proliferation of self-help discourses, magazines advises to girls, the kind of pervasive presence of the beauty industry. There is an intense focus on the psychological, on this self-scrutinization, which also corresponds, she says, to an internalization and a kind of unconscious absorption of the male gaze, of the male focus on women's bodies. In the post-feminist environment, women present themselves as sex objects because they choose to do so. And this internalization of the male gaze leads to a new disciplining regime in which heterosexual male fantasies are acted out by women, but not for men's pleasure, but for their own pleasure. In news media, all women's bodies are available, Gill says, to be coded sexually. It doesn't matter whether you are, a model or a porn star. You can be a politician, a foreign correspondent, or a news anchor. All women are judged for their sex appeal. Men's magazines, on their side, represent women as monitors of sexual and emotional relationships, are responsible for protecting against sexually transmitted diseases and pregnancy, etc. Even in children's TV, girls are sexualized. For example, an ad, this is a British ad, selling tongues to 5-year-old girls reads, "When I'm bad, I'm very, very bad, but when I'm in bed, I'm better." Hard to believe, but true. Individualism, choice, and empowerment is another feature. As I said, Brazilian waxes, breast augmentation surgery, and all possible tricks with makeup. As we've seen, there are entire YouTube channels dedicated to this, are presented as women pleasing themselves, as expressing themselves, and scant attention is paid to the commercial pressure that is constantly exerted on women to present themselves as pleasing themselves. Now, Rosalind Gill asks, is this kind of femininity a true expression of a subjective choice? And if this is the case, why do these bodies all look so similar? Hairless body, slim waist, firm buttocks, etc. This is in the context of, the broader rise of the neoliberal subject as a free agent. We now live in a society in which we are all supposed to freely express ourselves and never act under the influence of any institution. Finally, the resurgence of sexual difference. Gill argues that beginning in the 1990s, we saw a return to the celebration of genetic, bodily, and psychological differences between men and women. This kind of sexual difference has nothing to do with the discourse of sexual difference from second wave feminism of the 1970s. Rather, from this flows that men need to be more masculine, that is, to free themselves from the politically correct and from feminist repressive discourses that tell us, men, that we are fundamentally wrong because we are men. And the success of the Donald Trump figure and campaign can also be partly inscribed or ascribed to this kind of discourse. Women, on their hand, can be as feminine, that is, as sexy as they want, because there is nothing bad in it. And the argument goes that this difference, the sexual difference, enables a heterosexual re-eroticization of culture and daily life that we had lost under the pressure of feminist repressive discourses. Finally, Gill concludes that there is an inherent paradox in the post-feminist sensibility because it incorporates both feminist and anti-feminist ideas and stances. We can say that post-feminism is feminist in that it celebrates women's subjectivity, agency, and will, and women as autonomous and independent from men. But it is also anti-feminist in that it represents feminists, especially second-wave feminists, as punitive and repressive of women's true desires and selves. And it perhaps, I would add, it's not so feminist because in many cases, as we have seen, this notion of a woman as a desiring sexual subject corresponds to an internalization of the male gaze, that is, of the perspective from which men see women. I have no questions in relation to this presentation. I think we should continue our discussion, but this time by responding to the review of the comparative analysis of a Sex and the City and a Girls episode. Thank you for listening and watching.